Welcome back to the shed. Turning beads with a skew chisel is a skill that takes practice and time to master. I'm far too busy for that, so I bought a ticket to the fast track system. This is a carbide beading tool. 3 divided by 16 is 0.1875, or in other words, 5.5 millimeters. This is a piece of ash. It says so right there. With the ash mounted on the lathe, we can cut our very first bead. The tool is on the centre and I am applying light pressure. It's rather noisy, but it is cutting. Look at that, it's a bead! This is a HSS bead cutting tool, and this one measures 6 millimeters. The HSS seems to cut a little bit faster. Both that and the carbide both produce a pretty good bead. Let's try a few in a row, shall we? Light cuts first, just to establish the correct spacing of the beads. Then we can work back and forth until the beads look beady. Look at that, it's 5 in a row. Okay, the same process for the HSS cutter. Light cuts to start off with a bit of back and forth. This ash has a slight wobble, so let's go back to the carbide and remove the flat spots. That's better. There's still a bit of torn grain, but that's probably the fault of the ash. This is a piece of beech. The grain in the beech is a little bit tighter than the ash, so let's see what the carbide can do to it. Light cuts to establish the spacing, and a little bit of back and forth. Carbide beech beads look okay, apart from that bit. Let's see if the HSS can do any better. It certainly feels nicer to use. The cutting action is smoother. It's a bit noisy now. Let's hope the noise doesn't produce any chip out. Look at that! They've all got torn grain and bits missing. The easy thing to do is to blame the beech for the torn grain, But just in case, let's take a closer look at our technique. Light pressure to establish spacing. Nothing wrong there. Working back and forth along the beads. No noise from the wood. Looking good. We're getting close to the final form, and this is where the chip out is going to happen. If we colour the flat spots with a pencil, we'll be able to creep up on these beads. To remove the very last bit of the pencil, I'm raising and lowering the tool handle in a wiggle motion. Seems to be working. Much less chip out. The pencil trick was applied to the HSS cutter and the results are just as good as the carbide. This is a piece of sycamore. This is an extreme close-up of that sycamore with 2 carbide beads in it. Unsurprisingly, this is the HSS cutter cutting 2 beads into the same piece of sycamore. From this angle, we can see the slight difference in the shape of the beads. This sycamore is so light in colour, it's quite a strain to see the flat spots. So let's get the pencil out again. We can actually see what we're doing now. The outer points of the carbide are quite wide and almost create flat spots either side of the bead. The fine points of the HSS taper to nothing, resulting in no flat spots. This gives the impression that the HSS beads are oval in shape. If we add pencil to the spaces between the beads, we can see that the beads are almost identical. I wonder what they'll look like if we alternate the carbide and the HSS beads. Let's find out, shall we? Let's also mark the carbide with pencil so we don't get confused. Whether it's carbide or HSS, it really helps to see the cutter if we remove the chips after every cut. The wiggle technique we discussed earlier is back in play. I'm not sure why it works, but it does. In the words of Raymond Holt, can you tell which is which? Yes, the carbide beads aren't as wide as the HSS. This bowl is walnut. Only joking, it's cherry. And there's 2 of them. The first not walnut cherry bowl is getting the carbide treatment. We should have cut these before we hollowed out the bowl, but we're here now. We'll just have to put up with a bit of noise near the rim. The method is the same as before. The only difference is that the bowl has a slight curve to deal with. Rough greying at the rim, that'll explain the noise it made. Let's see if we can fix the first few beads with some extra gentle cuts. Looks pretty good to me. Nothing that a bit of 180 grit won't fix. Well, this is fiddly. This beeswax is going to get right into the bead grooves, like that. The second of the not walnut JK it's cherry bowls is getting the beading treatment HSS style. Those first couple of beads are pretty noisy, but the rest are cutting nicely. This is a close-up of the last two noisy beads. We can see the flat spots screeching their way to becoming beautiful beads. And they are beautiful. Okay, everyone move back while I sand it a bit. The beeswax goes on just the same as before. And then the beeswax gets buffed. Look at that, it's two beaded bowls. There might be slightly different sizes, but they both look pretty beady. The carbide bit, it certainly does what it's supposed to do. It did seem to vibrate the most, but the wiggle technique helped with that. The HSS performed just as well, the only difference being the sharper edges of the cutter making for a tighter grouping of the beads. The Easy Wood Tools 3/16 negative rate beading cutter cost £30, but you also need something to attach it to, like a handle, and that's probably going to cost you another 30 quid. The Ashley Isles HSS 6mm beading cutter cost £50, but you do get a handle with it. Well, that was fun. Two different beady bowls using two different beading cutters. I must admit, I was hoping for a more dramatic difference between the two so I could sensationalise the thumbnail. Never mind, I'll talk to you next time.